My name's Drew Medallia. I'm a commercial kingfish jigger at Eden on the south coast of New South Wales. I'd like to take you guys out for a few days with myself and my business partner Peter Garrity, show you all about jigging kingfish. We find current is one of the most important factors when trying to jig kingfish, a far more important factor than water temperature. Without current, you just don't have the congregation of predators like kingfish on the reefs. Current obviously flows around structure like islands, like rocky headlands that stick out into the ocean, obviously attract more current, so they're the places to look for kingfish. That's where all the bait schools will also build up. So if you start looking on the upcurrent side of those headlands, look for the big bait schools on the sounder. Also, structure plays a part. The edges of the reef, where the reef will drop off onto the sand, is also important. So being able to determine rocky bottom from sandy bottom on your sounder is very important. I don't know why, but kingfish do prefer those sandy edges. So bottom structure as opposed to drop-offs, and drop-offs onto sand around rocky headlands are very important. Generally, if you can locate bait schools, you'll also locate kingfish. The first indication that you're in the right spot is obviously large towers of bait on your sounder. These may not necessarily be a food source for kingfish, but they'll congregate in the same areas as the kingfish. The reason they're building up in those areas is the same reason the kingfish will be there. A knowledge of your local reef and the bottom structure is very important. I think you have to know basically the rocks that those fish will congregate around and the areas of the reef where the reef will drop onto the sand, areas like that where the fish like to build up. So building a knowledge of that, both with your GPS and your sounder working together, is very important. Summer through to autumn, we find that the kingfish will tend to inhabit the reefs. Stronger currents, mainly from the East Australian current down the east coast, will build up kingfish on the reefs and rocky areas. Then more towards springtime, September through to October, November, the fish tend to roam a lot more, swim at high speeds and chase what we call microbaits, or like small, say 4-inch sized, usually baby pilchards. And when they get that image of that pilchard ingrained in their mind, that's the only thing they'll eat, and they become very hard to catch with jigging methods. It might be a time more to switch over to lures and surface lures. Following patches of birds and surface feeding fish is the way to go for that time of year. Trialled a lot of different big name reels over the years, and the two biggest weak points we've found in any jigging reel will be the handle assembly and also the anti-reverse system. So with the Marquesa, we've had no problems at all with reliability of the handle and also the anti-reverse systems. We've been using the Marquesas for over 4 years now. We would do on average 4 to 5 days a week on the water, using the reels for up to 6 hours a day in the hand use. We've had reels that have lasted for a good 3 years, have caught over 1,000 fish. Excellent value for money, excellent durability, and very capable reel. The biggest thing for us with the Marquesa is its overall durability. The fact that we've had years of use out of one reel with all original parts, and really all the other reels we've tried, nothing's come close to doing that. We've been using the Fin Nor Lethals for around 6 months now. They have many of the same good attributes of the Marquesas, but more for the budget-conscious angler. Both the 16 and 20s in single and 2-speed. This particular reel's probably been with us for 6 months now. It would have caught a few hundred fish. Still in original condition. It's had zero maintenance. And it has a really good drag mechanism for jigging, nice and free, solid anti-reverse, solid handle system. The Gary Howard Ocean Jeweler. It's a 6-foot rod, 20 to 30 pound. Excellent quality components, good solid reel seat, excellent grip, good spacing from the line to the grip so you don't cut your hand. Loads up really well. It's also got a really nice curve and tip in it for jigging. Pretty much suited perfectly to our preferred 200 gram jig range. Our basic jigging technique obviously is to let the jig to the bottom, and it's about a 1 metre jerk length on the rod. And that jerk length equates to basically one rotation of the reel handle. So that's where the retrieve ratio of the reel, that 6-to-1 ratio, matched in with the 6-foot rod, gives what we feel is a pretty good jigging action. On the hookup, can be easy. The kingfish could just hit the head of the jig hard straight away and have a nice solid hookup. Sometimes what they'll do is lift the lure up a few metres, so when you start your jig there'll be no weight there, and that's a time to set the hook by increasing your winding speed and lifting the rod at the same time, and that's where that 6-to-1 ratio comes in very handy. I used other jig reels that are around that 4-to-1 ratio, and when the kingfish lift the jig, it's very hard to actually set the hook by lifting the rod tip and trying to get a fast rotation on the reel handle. Jigging for kingfish could be regarded as very fatiguing compared to most forms of fishing. It's something that we have to do for long hours through the day, so fatigue management is pretty important to us. So I think that techniques we've developed over the years to cope with that can help out most other people, basically bring more enjoyment to their jigging. We don't find there's any need to overly exert yourself or do any violent actions or even jig your jig all the way to the surface. The fish today are quite close to the bottom as they're marking up on the sounder, so we're concentrating our jigging in that bottom 10 or 12 metres, and that's where that depth mark braid's very important. You can pick your colours, know when you're hooking up, and just fish that area in the water column. The fish are well conditioned and really swollen around the stomach. I tend to think that they're pretty well fed up recently, digesting food, so they're pretty doggy and not very active. Most of the hookups we're getting are just a real slow, fluid jig, just trying to keep it smooth, and that's where we find the Marquesa and the Gary Howard rods work so well. They just allow you a nice smooth jig action, less jerking of the jig the better. The knots we use for braid to leader are the Slim Beauty, and from leader to lure as the uni knot. We just find these knots quite simple and quick to carry out at sea, and they're quite long lasting and perform quite well. We prefer to use 60 to 80 pound fluorocarbon leader. Basically we'll tie our fluorocarbon to a solid ring. The solid ring will be stainless and rounded. Just basically maintains the life of the knot and the fluoro in that pressure point. Then we'll have a split ring attached to the jig. That enables the jig to be changed quite easily with split ring pliers. And the assist hook again has its own solid ring. We feel that maintains a better shape, keeps the assist hook quite free and hanging in the right position. And we basically have about a 7-centimetre assist hook, and that's more or less held in shape and protected a little bit by some heat shrink around the knotted area. Also, everything in the system would be rated to a minimum of 200 kilograms. Now, we feel the length of the assist hook is very important. We prefer that the base of the hook should be around 1/3 of the length of the jig or less. We feel that the kingfish tend to hit the head of the jig. We try to have that hook as close as possible to the top part of the jig. We find that this results in the best hookups around the mouth of the kingfish, which is where you want to hook it.
When we approach the fishing grounds, first thing we do is check the water quality. If it's a blue water, we'd go for a blue or a silver jig. If it's dirty water, we'd go with a pink or a green and gold jig. If it's going to be shallow, we'd like to use a centre-weighted jig, like one of these, and they tend to flutter a lot more and they work more in the shallow water. If it was deeper water, we'd like to use a top-weighted jig, like this one, straight onto the mark. Glow is definitely important too. You get the glow along the base of the jig. It's important in dirty water and in deep water.